So why don't you give me a bit more and the viewers a bit more understanding of what the four so I think there's four main types of
Yeah.
insurances that you offer and why they're important for and kind of where they're relevant as well at each level.
Yeah, cool. So the easiest way I can explain it is it's built on insurance that most people will be somewhat familiar with, and then it's how do you write those policies to achieve certain objectives. So on the baseline, you're looking at life insurance, obviously very black and white. You're either dead or you're not, so it pays out a lump sum or it doesn't. Critical illness cover, so a lump sum on diagnosis of things like cancer, stroke, attack, etc. Income protection is the third, so an income replacement if you're unable to work through sickness or ill health, and private medical insurance. So there's lots of advisors on the personal side that deal with just all of those four or just a few of them. The next tier up is where we specialize. So the first is shareholder protection. We look at the shareholder agreement and we check what it says about a deemed transfer of shares. Now, there are some that don't mention it at all, but if a shareholder dies, what is the plan for that business to buy the shares back, or are they happy to be in business with that person's husband or wife or child if they're not with anyone? What does that look like? So that's really when I said about the succession planning. It's making sure that the business has taken legal advice and thought about what it looks like if the worst were to happen. And that could just be life insurance in that wrapper, but it could also be critical illness cover, depending on what the clauses in the shareholder agreement say. So without going super granular on it, it's all about making sure that the business owner is really considered if we have a really bad day and someone's died or become very, very ill and they're never going to return to work, what are we going to do about buying those shares back? In the first year or two, it usually doesn't make much difference if it's a company that's following the usual trajectory of, not making much money or making a loss and then making relatively small profits. But when it's worth hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions, etc., you've got a mounting problem. Now, you've got a mounting ability to deal with that problem because you've got more income the more you're worth. But it's usually, it's always one or several steps ahead, and it's not possible to be able to just go, okay, we'll just dig in the back of the sofa and find £5 million to buy the shares back. So that's number one. The second thing I mentioned was continuity planning. So there's a few that wrap up into that. There's key person cover, which essentially is some money if a business owner or another key member of staff that's employed, doing some part of the day to day, either dies or becomes ill or can't work for a long period of time. And all three of the first that I said, life, critical illness, and income protection, could be wrapped up. It could be one of them, two of them, all three. And the objective there is just to have a cash injection into the business after one of those events. Now, I know it sounds like it's basically exactly the same as what shareholder protection does,
Yeah.
but it's written differently. Shareholder protection is about buying shares back. Key person protection is all about making sure the business can continue to survive after the loss of a key person. It might be, managing director's got lots and lots of uh, contacts in the industry that just can't be replicated, or it could be a financial director and they would need immediately to go out and hire someone else or outsource it to their accountant or whatever. The third is, it's still part of the continuity planning is debt protection. So a lot of our clients have taken out commercial mortgages or they've got invoice factoring or some other financial arrangement that if the worst were to happen, they would need to make sure that was paid back because the business might not be profitable enough to maintain those payments. And they might have also signed a personal guarantee on it, which they're usually not happy about signing, but usually want the debts. If they're concerned about personal guarantees, you can insure part of it. And then pivoting more to the people within the business and their needs as opposed to the business's needs directly, you've got individual cover and you've got group cover for the life, critical illness, income protection, and private medical. So we do schemes on the group side from two people up. It's not like common to have a really small group scheme, but if you've got a business where, there's only a few of them at the moment, but they've got very aggressive growth plans, it might be appropriate to do so because instead of having to write another plan every single time someone joins, you just add them to the group. And it's very cost effective, especially at scale. And then on the tax saving side, which is still, part of the employee benefit, so to speak, there's two that are incredibly beneficial. The first is relevant life. So a relevant life plan acts a bit like an ISA. It's just a tax wrapper for a life insurance policy that a limited company will own and pay for. It's an allowable expense. You save on corporation tax. It never gets to the point of paying income tax or NI. And the proceeds pay into trust for whoever you want the money to be left to. So if you've got a limited company and you've got a requirement for term life insurance, it is usually, I can't think of any reasons why it wouldn't be, it's usually the best way of setting it up. especially when you consider that you can convert that into a personal plan down the line. So if you sell the business or you leave it for some other reason, you can just convert it into a personal plan, which is then priced as of when you took it out, not as of now, when you're older and maybe less healthy and things like that. And on the flip side, income protection, which is one of the more undersold products, but is incredibly valuable to anyone who's not, a multi-millionaire who's got assets that are, earning them their keep. If you are reliant on your own income, and usually that's from a business, the clients that we're talking about specifically, you can put what's known as an executive income protection plan, and it is also typically considered an allowable expense for the business. So it's effectively a sick pay policy for that business, covers up to 80% of salary, dividends, other recurring income, and then on top you can do NI and pension. So, if you've got, someone like you who's advising, okay, you've hit that threshold, you're about to go into the additional rate band, and maybe you're saying, look, we're going to set up a company pension, you're going to put in a couple of grand a month or whatever it is, so that they're making the most of that tax efficiency. Executive income protection is an absolute no-brainer because you can protect the income they're drawing and the income that they're putting into the pension. So if they go off long-term sick, those pension contributions don't stop. They're continually building and building and building, and whatever their retirement goal that you've worked with them to set up is set up so that it can still be met rather than the contributions stopping because they can't work.
Yeah, and that feeds in exactly why we have this relationship and why we feel this is so important, because we, from the day one, we'll set out someone's future plans, but anything can happen along the way. And if those things happen, the idea of the services that you offer and the insurances you provide clients is to make sure that the protection is there so they can either still achieve their goals or their family can. That's the outcome of what you're effectively trying to do. So